Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
We've talked about this concept before in different contexts, and that's how police officers can lie to you during an investigation, and it has no negative ramifications for them. Now, if you lie to them, that'll come back to haunt you. And some people have pointed out that it might not be fair for a police officer to lie to a child who's being questioned by the cops. And so Indiana has now begun work on a bill that, if passed, would make children's statements mostly inadmissible if law enforcement lied to them. And I think this is a good thing. So this bill has made it through the state Senate of Indiana. It's been sent over to the House. They'll do what they do, and then this could become law. Madcap sent me the story. WFYI Public Radio had the story, and I also got some information from elsewhere. A bill passed the Indiana Senate that would largely make statements made by children inadmissible in court if they've been lied to by law enforcement. Now, of course, this is going to cause all kinds of other issues. The question can become, what's a lie? So the guy twisted the truth a little bit. Is that a lie? But under current Indiana law, if a member of law enforcement knowingly lies about criminal evidence, information, or consequences while interviewing a child, Indiana law allows the child's statement to be used against them. So, for instance, if a child got caught doing something, police officer says, "Did you do it?" "No, I didn't do it." Okay, well, here's the deal. You understand that you're going to go to prison if you did do it? Now, if prison's not a possibility, you can understand how a statement like that might freak a kid out. And so I can think of all kinds of examples, but that's probably the most obvious one. So those statements can be used now, but Senate Bill 415 would prohibit these statements from being included in court proceedings if this law gets passed. Researchers have testified about the proposed legislation and said that youth don't have the brain development to comprehend that an adult officer might be lying to them. The bill's author said he hopes the legislation will build trust between law enforcement and the community. It's wrong for you to lie to us, but we can lie to you? That is something I think has been problematic, and I think that this is a way that you could restore that trust. The bill unanimously passed the Senate, unanimously, and now will be headed over to the House. Now, there's a couple other statements I got from other sources, and one of them is something that people often point out when I talk about law enforcement lying during investigations. And Nikki Jackson, a criminal justice professor from Purdue, said, "We don't allow defendant suspects to lie, so we should never allow police to lie." And again, people ask, well, then how is that fair? Police officers can lie to you, and you lie to them, they'll go, "Hey, just keep in mind, if you lie to us, that's a crime." Researchers testified, said that youth don't have the brain development to comprehend because the prefrontal cortex, which controls the brain's decision-making, planning, and impulses, doesn't fully develop until about 25. So obviously a child does not have the same mental abilities that an adult does. Meanwhile, Courtney Curtis from the Indiana Prosecuting Attorney's Council opposed the legislation during the initial hearing. She said the law isn't necessary because Indiana allows parents to consult with their children before an interrogation. And of course, that's assuming that that always happens that way. And we all know what's going to happen is, kid gets picked up for something, and as they're taking him to the station and they called the parents, they're going to start talking to the kid. So meanwhile, a senior staff attorney of the Indiana Public Defender's Council disagrees with the Prosecuting Attorney's Council. He emphasized that most parents aren't lawyers and likely do not understand the law any better than their children do. The protection of a parent in a meaningful consultation is inadequate to protect kids. We need further protections like this. So you'll notice that the bill was passed unanimously. Very rarely do you have bills that get passed with such overwhelming support. And I believe that suggests that most people are on board with this. And I have had people ask me about the notion that police can lie to you. Does it ever come back to haunt them? And the interesting thing is that if a police officer gets on the stand and testifies in court, and you as an attorney know that they lied during the investigation, you can bring that out on cross-examination. Absolutely. You can always cross-examine a witness on foundational issues and also their truthfulness because they're testifying. So you could ask the police officer, isn't it true that you told my client this, right? And isn't it true that when you made that statement, you knew it was false? So you, in fact, lied to my client, correct? Obviously correct. So you lied to my client, which you admit now, but on the stand, you want us to believe you're telling the truth because you're under oath. And you'll get this thing where they go, well, that's an investigative technique. It's an investigative technique. And I think that many people, number one, can understand how that could be an investigative technique, but also understand that there's something inherently wrong with it. And so getting back to false statements that police might make as an investigative technique, let's suppose that a kid gets picked up and the police think that this kid may have committed a crime, okay? And so they got the kid in the back of the squad car and they're taken to the station. And they've already called the kid's parents, right? And the kid goes, I want to talk to my parents. And they go, oh, we're sorry to tell you, but your parents got killed in a car accident half an hour ago. So you won't be talking to your parents. Now, let's talk about what you guys did, what you just did with your friends. I mean, they could do that as an investigative technique. And now, if that came out in court, it might make them look really bad for making that kind of a false statement. But if the kid then spilled his guts and said everything that the police wanted to hear, they go, well, but we were successful. You see, if we get the results we like, it's a successful maneuver. So it's an investigative technique that worked because we got a confession out of the kid. And I've also mentioned before, Timothy Masters, I wrote a book about him called Drawn to Injustice. And I co-wrote the book with him. He's a friend of mine. In fact, I chatted with him last night. And he was accused of a crime as a teenager. And the police asked him and his father to come into the police station. And his dad was a real law and order kind of guy. He was a veteran and all this stuff. And the police pulled his father aside and said, hey, you got a problem if we talk to your kid alone? Dad goes, no, I got no problem with that because his dad trusted the police. So the dad tells Tim, hey, you got a problem talking to the cops, without me there? Because I think it's okay. And Tim goes, no, it's okay. And they spent hours and hours and hours lying to him, berating him, yelling at him. I mean, and we know this because they videotaped all of it. I've seen the videos. And he, to his credit, stuck to his guns the entire time. Said, I had nothing to do with this, what you guys are accusing me of. And he's the one who was charged with killing somebody and spent 10 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. And the prosecutors of the county and the judges and the courts and pretty much everybody institutionally who was involved, they apologized and cleared his name later. Unfortunately, the people who were behind putting him away were no longer in those positions. So it was the people who replaced them who apologized. But it's largely because he spent 10 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. And if anybody looks at his story, they would have said, oh, the father should not have trusted the police. And the father should have said, oh, you want to talk to my kid? Tell you what, no. And we're lawyering up. That's what should have happened. And he probably wouldn't have been charged with anything or sent to prison. But unfortunately, there are people out there who don't know that the police will lie to you, that actually believe that the police will always do everything on the up and up. And it's not always the case. It's not always the case. So I like this bill. I'm curious to know how it's going to define some things, because what if it's a small lie that's not important? That kind of thing. It's just a little white lie, But I suspect if this passes in Indiana, that other states might pass a similar law as well. So Madcap sent this. Thanks a lot from WFYI Public Radio. The bill that would make children's statements mostly inadmissible if law enforcement lies to them has now passed the Senate of the state in Indiana. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I think God's going to come down and pull civilization over for speeding.